Good evening. It is 5:30 p.m. and I am calling this regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education to order. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I will look for an approval of our agenda.
Madam President,
Robin?
I move approval of the agenda with the human capital addendum.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Robin and a second from Nikki to approve the agenda with the HC addendum. Any discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposition, same sign. Okay, motion passes 9-0. And now we will move on to the recognition of audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, 2 speakers have signed up to address the board. Each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our first speaker to the podium, Devin Stasinski.
Backed by popular demand by people who want questions asked but are too scared to come ask them themselves. I only have 2 questions for you tonight before I take my leave back to Enderlin. 1, how is it that the district operates with Miss Kristen Nelson's organization without a contract on file? 2, with the recent Supreme Court decision about Title IX, it now brings Title IX in alignment with North Dakota state law. The very same law administration said that they would not follow last year, August. So, the question becomes, and this is going to be a good question for Tara and for Melissa's office, is the administration going to reassess its approach now that they would be in opposition to not only North Dakota state law, but also now federal law under Title IX? The argument was federal supremacy. Well, now the recent Supreme Court decision basically aligns with our state law. So, just some food for thought on potential complicity for not following the law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Paul Moore.
Paul Moore, I'm from Fargo. A few things I actually learned to start writing them down and keep it less than a page so I know how to finish. EL 16, item 1, failed to develop and execute a plan that establishes priorities for construction, renovation, and maintenance projects. And that got a big pass, but I'd say at a certain level, since I was on it, that yeah, there was a kind of a high level plan that did get developed, but execution, no. Even in the response, it says that only a pre-bond referendum study is underway. So I mean, I don't know how execution is a positive. I mean, it may be just at a certain point, it's overextended a goal. okay, everybody wants to put a stretch goal out there, but at a certain point, if you've overextended the goal, you've overextended the goal. Just step up and admit it, that, that there are things that need to be worked on. Item 2, fail to project life cycle costs. Gave that one a big pass. And I'm like, wait a minute, being $200 million behind isn't a failure to project costs? That doesn't make sense to me, that you end up 200 million off and it's not a failure. And the remaining items, I mean, they're okay. Just, one thing about when I was listening to the union, and one of the, the things that they brought up, you criticized the fact that you used negative language in their proposal. And then so when the vote came, it was like, is this a negative of a negative or a negative of a positive? But they're all kind of written that way. So I would suggest that if those things can't be, a negative presentation, then neither can this. Memo 22, quickly, it may sound mean, but at what point, this is just a question, at what point does the school stop providing a certain service? I mean, at a certain point, we can't do everything, right? Like if the student's got the flu, you send them home. So, in terms of 22, or Memo 22, it's like, at what point does that stop? And the last little comment about Memo 24, I guess if you wanted to pick confluence, why didn't you just come out and pick them instead of going through the, request for proposal? First of all, why are we having someone tell us what to do with decommissioned buildings? We can't figure that out for ourselves. But second of all, I kind of go down the list of the criteria and the scores that were given, and except for this bonus round, additional value and innovation, CESO looks like they should have won, and especially considering the cost. 8.
Okay, thank you. We will now be moving on to our reports, and I don't think we have an FEA report this evening. So we will move along to the administration report.
I will hand it over to Dr. McKenna first to go through the first item under administrative report, and then I'll take the next 2 items from there. I know FEA couldn't be here, but I just wanted to acknowledge Dr. McKenna, Dr. Fremstad, and I had just had a great conversation this morning with Laura Christensen, FEA president as well, and we really look forward to starting a good school year with her today. And I think if she's not here, she's probably prepping for the school year that starts tomorrow, so that's probably her reason.
Madam President, Dr. Gandhi, members of the board, cabinet, this is really a supplemental item for your awareness. In an earlier board meeting, we discussed the adding of voluntary benefits for accident, hospital indemnity, and critical illness. And this is just to let you know, when we briefly talked about pet insurance and legal insurance, we had to do some further work with that to get the best group rates. And so what is before you is just some information that we are adding those 2 items as a benefit, a voluntary benefit for our staff. And I would stand for any questions if you have them.
Allie? Can you, turn on your mic.
There we go. Got it. I will eventually figure this thing out. Just wondering if there's a cost to the district to be able to provide these additional services.
Yeah, great question. There is no cost to the district at all. These are really just benefits that a lot of our employees probably already have, but they get them at a cost of an individual rate. And so the benefit of this voluntary option at no cost to us is we were able to go out to market with our number of employees and get a great rate. And if they choose to be interested in any of these plans, then they can select them. And if not, then they don't have to. But yeah, absolutely no cost to us.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. McKenna.
So I have the next 2 items under administrative report. I'm going to wait for IT in the back room to kind of turn on the monitors. And so I'll skip over those 2 real quick while that's happening. And I just want to make one quick announcement that's not on here. I wanted to recognize Jackie Gap, her team, our business services team, and then even an individual that's not here with us at this time, who is Tony Hughesby, who was our grant manager during The last 3 years of us receiving our federal funds from ARP because of COVID-19 relief. As you know, and I think some of the articles that I've shared with board members, school districts across the nation are struggling with the fiscal cliff and a significant impact, causing significant teacher layoffs across the board because of just the lack of the continuation of ARP funds. We are in a very different position in Fargo Public Schools. Not that we don't have challenges. We continue to have challenges and limitations of resources as well. But we are one of 2 school districts that are being highlighted at the national level, being asked to do a congressional briefing. So myself and a superintendent from Oklahoma have been selected to represent all superintendents across the nation in DC in the beginning of September, specifically to talk and demonstrate our utilization of ESSER funds. There are things that we would do differently if we had to redo it today, and things that we would probably even learn from our own experience. But even coming out of that, some of the things that stand out is, I've shared this before, our investment in human capital with our ESSER funds was significant. And we were able to invest in human capital with the intention of making sure that we grew capacity in our teaching staff and all of our staff. So we upskilled our workers. Anything from our All for One project that allowed many of our teachers to get ESL or special education certified just so they can have that skill set to differentiate instruction has been helpful. Our investment in teacher coaches, but then also just the way we were able to do that work and navigate through that process, which was extremely difficult for our team, our human capital team, our business service team, to have individuals go out of the classroom and then come back when we knew those funds are going to be running out. But part of the reason we were able to do that is Tara worked with myself and several other people across the state to pass some legislation that allowed us to support grant-funded positions that now allowed us to be able to reposition individuals so then we don't have that fiscal cliff that we knew that we wouldn't have as well. So that the outcomes that we were able to track and the way we were able to utilize our dollars and the things that we did is now a point of national recognition, and it's something that I'm extremely going to be proud of, representing Fargo Public Schools on Capitol Hill. So I just wanted to make sure that Jackie, her team, but really everyone all around, because everyone had an investment in that $44 million that we received over the last 3 years, and what we were able to do with that has been extremely significant in moving our district forward. So extremely proud of that work. And with that being said, I will now kind of go into our admin report. And there's 2 things on your agenda today. One is the Cascade execution platform. And for board members, I know that you've heard me talk about Cascade before, and it's always been a little bit nebulous in terms of when the school year starts, we're going to be starting with this platform that we have available. We have that is now live, so I wanted to just provide a quick demonstration today to board members of what is available and how that could be utilized, and I apologize. All right. So as of yesterday evening, what we have posted on our public website, if you go to Fargo Public Schools, fargo.k12.nd.us, and then you were to go to strategic plan, there is a new sub-website that we have created on our strategic plan website, which is called our FPS Unified Strategic and Operational Plan Scorecard. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the strategy execution platform that we're using for the district, I've learned something new, does not have an iframe that allows us to embed it into the website. So hopefully maybe down the road that might change. So it requires an external app and a login, but this is where you can access our district scorecard and our strategic execution platform. So we have clear instructions there. We have a public account for any individual that could go to cascade.app, and then you click on login. And once you do that, you'll be asked to enter credentials, which are provided here on the website. And once you're there, you will see this home screen and a report that's called FPS Unified Strategic and Operational Plan Scorecard. As shared previously, this is going to give you a pretty detailed overview of everything that we are doing as a district. So at the top of this report, the first thing that you'll see is a quick legend that tells you all of the different elements that we have in our strategic plan, starting with our highest level goals, which are the results that the board monitors, followed by each of the measures that we have for under each result, that the very concrete SMART goals that we've established as an organization, along with each of the strategies that we're executing, which we're calling our operational plan projects or specific actions. So any member of our community, they will be able to go to this report. They will be able to follow the same cascading order of our strategic plan. If you hover over any of the information on the right, or you'll be able to see the full text, so you'll know exactly what they're talking about or what each element is talking about. But what you'll see in this plan is not only the results for each area and the specific action steps that we are taking to hit those results and the very specific measures that we're measuring as an organization, you'll also see information such as this, which is unweighted financial transparency measures. So this year, when we went through our strategic staffing and strategic budgeting process, we made sure that we tagged all of our action items and all of our investments as a district per each of the measures, each of the goals that the board has approved, where we want to go and see what we're investing into those goals that we're trying to achieve. So throughout the year, we're going to be able to pull data for you that says we're spending X% of the general fund towards the staffing budget to achieve our goals for Choice Ready. We're spending X% of the general fund towards our goals to make sure that all of our students have a safe and learning environment. How much are we spending on our facilities? What are the concrete actions that we're doing? Not only do you have access now, and our community has access to the percentage of our general fund that's been used on a staffing and non-staffing level, they will also have access to, when we approve our final budget in September, what is going to be the allocated amount of money for each department or for each scope of work that we've done. So really, every aspect of our organization is going to be financially and academically, in terms of looking at our progress monitoring techniques, available for our community and for board members to be able to use through this platform. So as you have conversations, as you go through the board work, you throughout the year should be able to recognize that if we have limitations in resources, if we have different pieces or initiatives that we want as an organization to implement, what that would cost to the district, but also be able to recognize how those trade-offs work. Going back to our board work session when we talked about the budget hold'em and the trade-offs that you need to do, this is the opportunity to be able to take a look at the holistic piece of the organization and see what aspects of it are connected, where we're spending our money, what are the outcomes that we're getting to. The most important use of Cascade is ultimately going to be making sure that we are doing what we're saying we're going to do and trying to hit the goals that we have as an organization. So for us, the most important use of Cascade is really going to be taking a look at the very specific measures that we want to achieve as an organization, and then seeing if the completion of our strategies actually results in an improvement of those measures or not. Because if not, then we will have the capacity in real time to sunset some of those strategies and then implement new strategies as we need to be able to do as well. In the past, our monitoring system as a board has been misaligned to when we sometimes receive data, or also when our budgetary processes as an organization. So everything's been a lagging indicator. We have never been able to make real-time decisions to change and pivot when something's not working, because we also know that we have to be able to reallocate resources in the next year's budget cycle, rework with the board if we need to change goals or change a metric that we're working towards. With the implementation of Cascade and having this real-time data that's going to be uploaded or updated on a nightly basis, and the implementation of monthly reflections, we now have created that structure where we can also tell you, hey, this measure wasn't working, or we had to sunset a strategy here. So we can make some of those changes in the unified and operational plan in collaboration with the board or the planning committee or whoever the appropriate person may be, or group of individuals may be, in real time. So then we can have a continuous improvement process that keeps moving the district forward towards achieving those outcomes that we want as well. So that is me sharing a lot of the Cascade platform. I know board members have access to it, but last night is when it became available to our public through the website as well. So wanted to take a quick moment and just share that and see if board members have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Gandhi? Jason?
I don't so much have a question. I imagine this is a ton of work for you guys to build and maintain, but I think it's excellent for transparency with our community. So thank you for doing that. I look forward to monitoring it and seeing where we go over the next year. And it allows you to make real-time changes for things that aren't working. I'm curious, any other government entities in our region have anything like this? Are you first to the field with this?
I think as it relates to the systems thinking and strategic alignment work, I think that work is just good leadership and it happens across many other schools, and it's just work that I know that I'm a mentor for national superintendents with 4 other mentors, and we've been kind of training our mentees to do the same level of work. I don't think it's ever been captured and transferred at this point. Cascade is one of the leading strategy execution platforms, and if you just go to their website, you'll see companies like Honeywell and Sourcewell and a whole bunch of major companies that use them. I have not seen any other school district use them, and I think in our interactions with their IT team, it seems like we're one of the first school districts.
Great, thank you. Greg?
Is it worth holding out hope that it won't be really, really slow eventually? Like it is like nearly unusable.
We are learning every single day with their IT team. So even prior to this meeting, we were having a conversation about a couple of other things that we want to see them work. They've been very responsive to our needs. I don't want to tell you it's worth holding out hope and then be wrong, but we are continuing to work and make the platform better with them. They've been very responsive so far. So if speed is a piece, there's just a lot of data to be loaded too. So I can talk to them about that. I do want to share that although this is live, we are still cleaning up some data. The budget is still in process for this school year. The final budget will be approved by the board in September. We will put the numbers for what we have, but that doesn't mean that it won't change either. So some of the numbers in here might be missing at this point because we're still connecting some of those data points, but we do anticipate everything to be up and ready soon, and I will take the feedback on the lagging. So thank you.
You still going, Greg?
I had a handful
totally
of questions
fine.
written down for later, but this seems like the more appropriate time to talk about
You go
it.
for it. Got it.
What is like the life cycle? Like I'm like looking at what you're presenting. It says June through July, so it's right like the school fiscal year. But there's quite a few metrics that I've come across that will have like something to do with like a month by month, where some it may not be appropriate to show something month by month. And I'm just kind of curious about like how we can best like make it clear what's going on with a lot of the metrics, instead of having like a one size fits all type thing of like, oh yeah, we're looking at this by the year, but like some stuff like it's not appropriate July through June anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So the entire Cascade platform and what you see as their health bars, which will tell you like we're at risk for something or we're on track, is all based on when our strategic team leaders and the individuals are responsible for each project or measure, what they put in as a start and end date, which is why we have these sub tags. So 7th grade, Career on Wheels. This is a project that we started in 2023 and 2024, but it's also a project that we probably use. That's a strategy that we utilize year after year. So we can tag that it started in this school year, but then for this year, there's 2 ways we can go about it. If it's going to happen once throughout the course of the strategic plan, you will see a start date at the start of the strategic plan, which is July 1st, 2022, and an end date 2027. If it's something that's happening annually, you may see that same project or a project like that would say starting year 23, 2024, and then every year it would just be on July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. At that point, this progress bar would only look at the progress within that time frame that has been set. So that's going to be, so in terms of what's available here publicly, I don't know how to make it cleaner. I can adjust how much columns there is, what we decide to share and don't share. When board members go into the platform themselves, they'll be able to click on any of these pieces of information. They can go into, and it'll pop up here on the side, as you talked about the speed a little bit, Greg. They'll be able to dive deeper. They'll be able to look at the success criteria, but they'll also be able to take a look at if there's been any updates over time. But for some of these measures, you can also look at data points and how they've changed over time as well. So it's really going to be based on what each department lead or strategic initiative team sets as their start date and their end date. And I think that's going to be really important to take a look at, because we have a 5-year strategic plan. We do 1 year work at a time and certain goals that we're trying to hit. Some of those goals might be monthly goals. Some of those goals are semester goals. Some of those goals are annual goals. And those dates are going to dictate that progress towards it. So that's going to be the most important piece.
Last question. As I struggle to use this platform and have questions on any specific measure, should I contact the, one of the people who's like listed as like the owner of it, or like who do I ask questions about? Mostly, so far my questions have all been of like, how do I interpret what I'm seeing on Cascade? So I don't know if that's like borders IT versus subject matter experts. Any guidance on who
Great.
to call?
Yeah, great question. I would say that if you have questions specific to Cascade, the platform, myself, Bill, Stephen Duro, Jared, if there's questions specific to the content of like what is being provided to you in a reflection, results, any of that, you can contact that strategic initiative team leader, which are, you'll see those have been identified in here or through our structure chart. So Leanne, Tristan, Todd Olson, Denise Jonas, Anne Marie, Missy, Bob. So those are the individuals who are in charge of those specific results as well. So that's where I would draw that line. But always, board members can always reach out to me and I'll connect you with the right individuals. And I'll be happy to share who those are, because I just get to speak on behalf of the great work that they do.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on Cascade?
Me.
Kristen?
So looking through this was a big lift, it looks like. The not only the content in it, but everything that is connected into it. So congratulations on that, because that's a lot of work. It's huge, like Jason said, for just transparency's sake for the district, but I think also a big accountability piece that you can live track in here is going to be really important. And I think that folks across the district will, once they figure out how to use this, will really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great. Nimal?
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for putting this together. I'm just re-saying it, what everybody's saying here. And I think that is really great. And I understand there's a lot of work that has been put in. And I can see that, as you mentioned, there's some that are still not uploading yet. So, that has not been uploaded. And just going off on what Christian said, for me is I know that community will have a lot of confusing, like how to navigate this. And for the rest of the board, it would be so easy to reach out to you. Can the community or the parents, who have questions on certain of these topics that has been put in here and they do not have an understanding, can they be able to reach out, and say, hey, can you be able to explain this to me a bit more? Because I did not understand the concept or the information that has been presented here. Can they be able to do that?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And they could reach out to myself or any staff member, and that piece is always going to be available. This looks overwhelming and complex now, and it will be for our general community. I think the most use for the scorecard, I mean, we have it publicly available because we want to be transparent about where our dollars are and the outcomes that we're trying to work towards and what we are doing to achieve those outcomes. But I also understand that having to log into an external site that is kind of clunky and slow and then navigate through a whole bunch of educational jargon is difficult for someone. So I don't think the expectation is that we want our community to go in here and then be able to understand everything. But we do want to have the tool available for the individuals that kind of want to dive in deeper. Again, the legend is right up at top, so it follows the same structure. But we ask questions. This is really a database that anyone can go back to at any time and look up and say, where is the district spending money on Choice Ready? Or what is the district doing around creating a sense of belonging for all students? And what does that work look like? And are we actually making progress in those areas for what we want to do? Or what are the data points that we're using to create success? It allows you, once you get to be able to understand how that structure works, go and look into it. I can also go up top and just start typing in Choice Ready or different pieces, and it'll start filtering through some of those other pieces that you have too. So if you get those questions, you'll be able to use that. But no, I agree, they can reach out anytime. I do think that this is still gonna look complex and overwhelming. Just know it's out there, and even if it's a reference for us to give you the information, we can look it up quickly for you for whatever information you need. But we think that our board, our community, and our students deserve to know where our values are. And I believe that our values are portrayed through our budget and where we spend our time, energy, and resources. And I think we will be very transparent about where that is in Fargo Public Schools.
Okay, thank you for that. Are we ready to move on to the strategic plan reflections? I think so. Okay, let's go ahead and move into that.
In your board packets, you have this month's strategic plan reflections. One of the pieces that we asked the board when we updated the results policies this past year was the ability to put in a monthly reflection piece, so then we can provide you just when we make changes as an organization because a data point may be inaccurate or because of whatever reason, now that we want to be able to make some of those more quick and nimble changes to be able to be responsive to our student needs, sometimes we would be handicapped if we can't make a change with the board only once a year. What the strategic plan reflection piece allows us to do is allows every strategic initiative team leader to give the board an update on a monthly basis of here's across the 5 categories that we defined reasonable progress for. Here's what we've been working on for the last couple of years. So to me, the value of that is twofold. One is it allows the staff to make changes in real time and then capture those changes and tell the board without being a year later and then that getting a little bit confusing. But then secondly, it also just allows us, again, to constantly go back to what's the main thing for us in our organization, and that is achieving those measures that the board has said is the biggest priority. So the reflection piece was put into place. We've had extensive conversations, both looking at the content and formatting of the reflection piece. We're doing it in Cascade, but then they'll also be provided part of your board packet once a month at your second board meeting, like they were this time around. So if you have questions, please let us know. If you have feedback on the reflections, please let us know. We talked extensively about length, and at the end of the day, where we landed was we want our staff to possess and have ownership over the measures that they're working towards and they're responsible for, because we all believe in these outcomes for kids. And our staff wants to show you everything they have. So if that's a little bit too much or too long for you, then let us know. But we didn't want the standard to be the length of a board packet. We wanted the standard to be the quality of the work for our kids. And that's the most important piece for us. So if you have feedback on content, formatting, how we go about our reflections on a monthly basis, let us know. Your results policies say that you can get an annual summative report along with other data points. Hopefully the monthly reflections serve as those additional data points as well to show you what we're doing to achieve reasonable progress towards those results that you've identified.
All right, Robin?
Thank you for the report. I thought it was a good read, so I appreciate the work. And I also want to thank you and Dr. Gross. When I was preparing for this meeting, you answered all of my questions in advance, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions?
I enjoyed the. Oh, sorry, Greg.
Just Kristen?
My bad. I enjoyed reading through this as well, like Robin said, I appreciated the high level look at all of the standards that have been looked at this last month. So thank you.
Okay, Greg?
I guess maybe wondering about, or point of clarification. So, Dr. Yanni, when you mentioned like wanting the ability to be able to make changes, right, which is a good thing, right? If something's not working, you want to keep doing it. So, changing throughout the year, that's great. I'm wondering if like what would change. I'm like, are we talking like to the point like a high level where we're just totally changing one of our standards or measures or operational items? Like where would that change take place?
Great question. So we want the flexibility, and where we want to get to as an organization is hopefully where most of the changes happen in our strategies, because we're seeing that they're not being successful towards the measures that we want to identify. I would love to tell you that we want to get to a point where we will not change any measures. We've kind of established a little bit of that culture, but after March, we have ended up changing some measures because this is new for us. And every department lead and strategic initiative team was tasked to set their own goals by in February, and said, and the criteria was it has to be a data point that you're working towards as a department, and that you can start tracking starting July 1st. Well, we set those goals. On March 26th, the board approved the strategic plan. And then as we started rolling it out and cascading some of those goals down with our principals, they brought some things to perspective for us that were really valuable. So one example I'll give you, because Strategic Initiative 2 tonight is going to be there, was we had a goal around catalyst certification and the amount of staff. We had a very engaging principal discussion at the secondary level about, is our intent really to get a certain amount of staff certified, or is the intent really to track the student impact of that certification? So like after that conversation, we did go in and capture, like if I go back to last year's Cascade, all of some of those changes that we made in some of those goals. So we went back and changed it to make it more student focused versus based on staff. So we've made some of those changes. It should be my responsibility. I think I communicated that when we did the end of year operational plan rollout. If we change any measure, I'll tell the board, but my goal would be not to change any measure. I think we are now at a point where we kind of know what we want. So everything standards can never change, results can never change. We want to get to a point where measures never change. This is year one. I think we'll be better there year two. I just can't give you that guarantee this year. But I think projects, if they change, they should change because we're sunsetting a strategy that's ineffective. And the beauty of the model that we put in place is that for any project, once it ends or once the school year ends, they have to complete a strategy effectiveness form to say whether that strategy was actually effective in moving the needle on the measure that we wanted or not. So we'll have all of that data. What I'm sharing with the board today is one report in one aspect of Cascade. Because it's clunky and complex, we're trying to chunk the material, but the functionality of Cascade is unbelievable, where you can go in for every single measure and project and do your own custom graphs to see whether your investment of dollars is actually moving the needle or not, to look at and structure things in the way that you want, to be able to look at the data and slice it and dice it how you want as well. So the answer to your question will be, hopefully starting next year, measures will never change. Starting this year, I can guarantee you standards and results will never change.
Okay, thanks. Melissa?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I was just wondering if in these first few reports, since I'm maybe going to speak for everyone, since we're all kind of learning Cascade, would it be possible to put like a directive of like, if you go to this page and filter by this, you'll be able to visually see what we're placing in our reflections, just so we can kind of, I guess, immerse ourselves in the tool a bit more?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And any or other feedback on Cascade too, like on what you want developed or what you want information on how to access and use that, please let us know. The Cascade team has told us that they could do trainings for the board, but time is hard to come by. Other pieces are come by. So we started with pinning a report to your home screen and accessing that first. After that, our goal is to keep sending pockets of information on how to be able to access some of that stuff, but we will definitely put that on the list. So that'd be great.
Okay, Namal?
Thank you. I actually did enjoy reading it too as well for this the strategy plan reflections, and I was just looking through it, and I was like, where is the evidence of growth for the students? Because I was so curious, just to see how they are doing and so forth. Is that something that you're going to do in the long run, and just to see how are they doing, and the growth for all the students, in our public school, just to see, where they are growing, where they are lacking, where are, if there are any missing piece that we should be able to improve in to help them succeed.
Yep, that's the goal, and those pieces will come, and that's the beauty of being able to report out now monthly, because any given month, we may or may not have data points. So I think these first couple months of school, we don't have student data because we don't have students in our buildings. Some of the goals that were set for this year, actually a lot of the goals that were set for this year is just going to be baseline decisions. We talked about this at the work session. I think we're going to be one of the first school districts in America that's actually truly implementing restorative practices, because what we're measuring is recidivism versus an exclusionary disciplinary practice such as suspension and expulsion. This is the first year where even created the ability to track recidivism, both at the student level and then secondly at the infraction level. So we're going to be creating baseline data. So August, when you get your September reflection, hopefully there'll be nothing because we've only been in school for 2 days. But over time, those number points are going to keep growing. So that's the piece. Todd Olson, entire Strategic Initiative 3, you will have data next month on the Trollwood program, but you won't have any other activity data until the first season is completed, and we have that survey data from how that students did and those activities and on those measures that we're tracking as well. But as soon as you have them and we can analyze and make changes or respond to that data within that month time frame is what that reflection is going to allow you to get there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? It sounds like we're all very eager to start clicking buttons and seeing data start filling up our screens. Greg?
One real quick question as far as the timing of these goes. I know our cadence is now going to be like once a month. We're going to get these reflections. Is it going to be like the 4 weeks prior, or is it just going to be like, so in September it's going to be like anything that took place in August, and we're like, even though we're not going to get the reflections until, I don't know, like September 20th, we're not getting any of September. It's just going to be August stuff to like.
Great question. I'll tell you what we put in place now. And again, all of this is up to the board. So if you guys tell us if you want to change it. The system that we put in place right now is that our cadence is on a monthly basis, the third cabinet meeting of every month. We're going to do strategic initiative reviews where we're going to look through the reflections ourselves and see what changes we need to make. And then we would bring that so that would be the Monday. It would get posted that Friday. That following Tuesday would be that second board meeting. So we plan on giving you the reflections the second board meeting of every month. As of now, unless we're told otherwise.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Allie?
Yes. So just to kind of piggyback on Greg's comment there, so that when we're getting the material, it's looking at the month in the rears then, correct? So it's always going to be 1 month behind?
Correct, but you have access to Cascade.
So we can look at the real lifetime data, but your reflections are going to be just on the historical month.
Yeah,
so the two different differentiations.
At this point, strategic initiative team leaders have the ability to put in reflections directly in Cascade, or they could put it in a Google Doc at our cabinet meeting, and then we'll copy and paste it to Cascade before the board meeting. Some of them might just use the Cascade platform because they don't want to put it somewhere separate, and you'll be able to see that, even if it's not going to be presented to the board until a couple weeks later. So board members always have access to us and to be able to ask questions. You can always see things that are in Cascade, and it's not just the reflections. So the reflections are the only thing that we're sharing with the board, because the reflections are based on our definition of reasonable progress. But you have people putting in updates on a day-to-day basis of just things that we're doing. They just might not be a reflection. I did leadership rounding this morning at Fargo South with Dr. McKenna, and I put that in there, like this is what we did. And so you can click on any of these items and you may see updates that are not part of your reflection, but you'll be able to get all of that in real time as soon as it's entered.
And then secondary point that I had was if this is something we're going to do for like board training, we could maybe couple that with some of the EL trainings and how we could utilize the Cascade program to look at our policy monitoring. So just a note on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions about this particular item? Okay, that moves us, thank you very much for putting all that together and sharing it with us. That moves us to the consent agenda. Do we have an emotion for that? Okay.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the addition of the human capital addendum.
Okay, so we have a motion from Nikki, a second from Namal to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes 9-0. And that moves us to our business item. The first business item, it comes from, it's memo 23, and that comes from Dr. Gandhi. Do you want to introduce this to us?
Thank you. Memo 23 is the summative report for Strategic Initiative 2. So with us today, we have our Director of Educational Justice, Tristan Love, and Assistant Director, Jen Saar. They have a brief presentation and will stand for any questions that you may have on the report. Again, just timing is interesting. We set some new measures for which we didn't even have data because it's the start of the school year. Each Strategic Initiative team was asked, like, when do you want to present your report to the board? This is the time that they chose, and it'll be the best time, I think, for their department based on the data they're collecting starting next year. But for this year, they literally just did a month reflection and they're coming off of this piece. So just that we're kind of dealing with a little bit of that timing piece, but we're stand to answer any questions, and I know they'll do a great job in presenting the information.
Great. So thank you, Madam President. Thank you, the board, the cabinet. Yes, we wanted to go first. As the Department of Educational Justice, we want to be on the cusp of innovation. We want to know, we want to do, we want to fail forward, we want to get feedback, we want to become better, because that's basically what our department is all about. So as you know, this template is new. The 5 categories of reasonable progress is new, and so that's reflected in our report. And so just kind of turning it on maybe. So just getting us started with Strategic Initiative 2, our annual report. So Strategic Initiative 2 states that the Fargo Public Schools will implement equitable district-wide processes to create a sense of belonging for all students and staff in physically and psychologically supportive environments. And that's the result. And under that results, we have 7 standards. And attached to those 7 standards, we have 30 measures. And so if you want to think about our reasonable progress in those 5 categories for each of those measures, we supposed to look at evaluation of data, aligned actions, talk about maintenance of flexibility, talk about evidence of growth and learnings and adaptations. And so that's why the report is pretty lengthy. The evaluation of data is pretty lengthy. While we did not get to evaluate all 30 data sets in the measures, we did feel like we were able to somewhat evaluate at least 24. And the ones that we did not evaluate were due to those measures, this is a new school year, those measures were just put in place, and hopefully you'll see those data pieces reflected in our monthly reflections, especially when talking about recidivism, because that's a new data metric we put in place. We have to create a data system for that, so we're doing a lot of work there. So we picked just a few that we really wanted to highlight for you all. And the one that I feel most proud of for our district is the Climate and Culture Survey. If you think about board meetings and previous board meetings, how many times the Climate and Culture Survey has came up. And that's due to the work of the educational justice team and principals and staff members that has helped us put together a meaningful mechanism for feedback from students, parents, and staff members. And so what you will see here is two of the measures that we're looking at under this particular, on the Climate and Culture Survey, has to do with safety and belongingness. And so the one we wanted to look at for belongingness in terms of student belongingness, you can see the results there is 2.96. And so the way that number was calculated, basically strongly disagree equals 0, strongly agree equals 4. We're right below the agree line, which would be 3. And so generally what that would tell us is the overall sense is students somewhat agree that they feel like they have some sense of belonging in our school district. And that's positive. And the downside of that, or the con potentially, is this is baseline data. We know that our principals have been working tirelessly this past school year to make sure their school environment is welcoming and feel like they belong. And so we don't know if that's a product of that work and what it would look like year after year. This measure specifically asks for an increase year after year. And so this is baseline data. It's a con, but it's also a plus because we're looking at the data, we're getting stuff right. The second part of this is by the end of the school year, the average score of staff indicating a sense of safety will increase. Again, 0 is strongly disagree, 4 is strongly agree. We had not the 90% participation from our staff, but we had a substantially significant participation from our staff that feel like they agree, almost strongly agree, 3.21, I believe. And so we're trending in the right direction with safety. That gives us confirmation that some of the safety measures and Strategic Initiative 2 have safety inside of it. That gives us confirmation from the perception of our staff. Some of these things are working. They're feeling safe in our schools, but that also shows us we have work to do. We have room for improvement, and we need to make sure we're continuing to ask for feedback from our staff, work with the safety committee and various stakeholders within our community to figure out how to improve. The last thing I'll show here before I kick it over to Dr. Sarr is basically some aligned actions that came out of this. We wanted to highlight the Climate and Culture Survey today because we want our community members and our stakeholders to know we listen to those surveys. We read the results. We go through those open-ended questions. And from the student perspective and the staff perspective and the parent perspective, and we're trying to do something about it. Those surveys don't just sit on the shelf. And so you can see some of the things we've implemented based on the feedback from those surveys. We've improved the survey because the safety on the student end was not explicitly asked to our secondary student. That came up in a board meeting at the end of last semester, and you'll see those improvements on the next survey. You'll see a detailed action plan that'll come out. Dr. McKenna will always tell you about surveys, and you got to do something with it. The community have to know you're doing something with it. So this year we'll be more transparent about that action plan and what our schools and what our district is doing about that survey data. Communities and schools. We talk about belonging. We talk about integrated student support and bringing social workers, dedicated social workers into our buildings to make sure our students have the support needed to survive and thrive in an ever-changing changing world. The super popular student code of character, conduct, and support that has recently been put out has been from parents, from staff, asking for clear and transparent discipline policies, infractions. And I have elementary students in a high school. How can I predict what they need to know? All of those things come from this survey result. And the last thing is just safety in terms of revising our emergency operation plan, which is our emergency response manual. And so you'll see in terms of flexibility, we're a new department. We're learning. I don't think you can get much flexible than a brand new department going into their second year. Dr. Sarr and I and the educational justice team have always been able to adapt to anything that's been thrown our way. And then when we came up with these new measures, for Strategic Initiative 2, being able to adapt and make sure our strategies align there. And then the last two things is the evidence of growth in our learnings and adaptations. You can see the evidence of growth in our survey participation and our response and how we're responding to that feedback, and as an organization trying to become more in tune with what is needed from our students, staff, and parents. You can see that in our enhanced safety measures and ALICE and mandated reporter, suicide awareness. And then you can see that in our culture and climate improvements. And I'm not talking about from a district level, but from a school level. Talk to a principal and they can tell you exactly what they're doing at their campus to improve the climate and culture and how those measures are attached to their strategic plan at the campus level. And so our schools are really, really putting a good foot forward to make sure they're, the students in their building feel accepted, respected, included, and supported. And I really appreciate that work. And if you ever read the open-ended survey response questions, and one of them says, what I like most about this school, it shines bright from our students and staff and parents that there's a lot of great things to highlight about our school district. And I'm gonna kick it over to Dr. Sarr.
All right, so just to be able to continue the conversation we've had over the last few years as it relates to mental health supports and then our community connections and resources as well. Just another couple of graphs that we pulled from the report that you've had some time with, but the first one really being, trying to target what percentage of students are receiving some of those additional higher level services or unduplicated services that in our school setting that the school district doesn't typically provide, such as clinical counseling. And those therapeutic supports. And so this one is one that we probably need to continue to have a little bit of conversation on, because as we were building these measures in the spring, talking about, what is a good number? And so in working with a variety of our national partners, just reaching out to them and some of the work that they have done, 2% really came in as a good number when you're trying to think, not everybody needs the services, first of all, and then what does that look like for implementation? And so based off of the research and the work that many of them have done, that was where we landed on that 2%. Then in the spring, as we were pulling those numbers together, as you can see, we surpassed that. We more than doubled that. And so just continued conversation for us to talk about. So where do we go from here? Do we continue to keep that goal of 2%? Do we increase it? Again, recognizing that it's not about getting to 100% here, because the services are varied and different, and everybody needs something different, and not everybody needs something. The other graph that you're taking a look at is something that we have been tracking for the last couple of years, but just how many providers are we partnered with? And by partnered, I mean real formal partnerships. So there's a contract and an agreement that we have with Fargo Public Schools and a community provider. And so in the spring of last year, we had 23 of those partnerships that were in place for the 22-23 school year. And then this past spring, as we rounded it out, we were able to increase that by an additional 9 partnerships. And so just feeling really good, right? To a point that might have been made earlier, when does the school stop providing those services? Many of these are services that the school doesn't provide. And so our opportunity to partner with those experts in the field who are situated both locally and nationally to be sure that our students have the services that they need is really what is able to wrap around our students so that they can be the best learners, which is ultimately what our goal is. So just taking a look then at some of those evaluation data points and aligned actions, again, pulling out from the report some highlights. And just what I was addressing already, we have been working diligently on trying to make more of those connections at the local level, as you saw specifically last year, and then also expanding that to the national level. So we've had opportunity in this past school year to do some partnership with AASA, being a part of their mental health cohort, which has allowed us to develop and foster some partnerships. It has led us into the JED Foundation, a real strong partnership with the JED Foundation, which we're very excited about, and who are going to be instrumental in helping us with our mental health steering committee as we engage in that work with the district comprehensive approach. Another one of our national partners that we've been in a lot of conversation, but from a contractual perspective, just started to engage in the spring of last year, and then we'll continue that work, is the Cook Center for Human Connection. And the Cook Center, you can see the 3 sub-bullets that we were able to do a little bit with last year, parent coaching, as well as the mental health series. And so we have those opportunities to continue with that. Very pleased in just the few months, the last 3 months that we were engaging parents to be able to receive some parent coaching so that they could be the best parents that they could be, helping their children, who are our students in the community, work through any just difficulties that happen in life, right? That ebb and flow. And some of those difficulties might be some smaller things, just getting along with friends at school, or time management in terms of being able to complete some homework and things like that. Or they could be part of a more complex situation that might also be affiliated with more of a treatment plan. The third bullet that you see is one that we're excited about being able to partner with the Cook Center to bring to the state of North Dakota, actually, and not just the Fargo Public Schools, but is the My Life is Worth Living. And that is a student-based animated, if you will, program for suicide prevention and awareness. And so that's in partnership with the Cook Center. They are going to be able to be providing that opportunity for all of the school districts in the state of North Dakota this year. And so very happy to be a part of that work with them as well. So you think about those competing priorities. I mean, that is the nature of the work we do, right? There's never enough time, there's never enough dollars, and there's never enough of fill in the blank. But I already mentioned the Mental Health Steering Committee. I think this is one of the pieces that we are very excited about being able to pull in a variety of staff and personnel to work together to really tackle this idea of mental health and support for our students. And how do we do that in a school setting? And what is our role as school teachers, administrators, counselors, social workers, et cetera? And how do we continue to partner across the community in order to provide all of that wraparound care? We're always competing, and I know that's for those of you that are returning board members, you've heard me say it multiple times, we're always competing on those instructional minutes anytime we create one of those new partnerships. So that's something we have to continue to be in constant conversation about, and be making sure for any of our students who might also be on an IEP that we're respecting the minutes that are required of that IEP, providing the Tier 1 guaranteed and viable curriculum for students, and then also trying to figure out how we put the puzzle pieces together to embed some of those community supports for those students who have those barriers to accessing the services on their own outside of the school day. One of the ways that we're able to do that is we have established some growing relationships with UND and MSUM and some federal grants that they have received. So their doctoral or graduate students are working with some of our schools that have been identified within their grant to provide those services that are more clinical-like, while their students are continuing in their graduate programs to fulfill their internship as well as their clinical hour experiences that are required of their programming. And so it's a great way for us, again, at no cost to the district or to the family, to be able to push it and provide some real intentional services. But again, requires that flexibility across the school, the district, the university, all the moving parts that are included there. So we've been very happy to provide those unduplicated services, as well as working with JED and AASA in terms of the comprehensive district approach. I think one of the things too, while I know this is a reflection on last year, but I have to give this teaser because it's something that we've talked about historically as well. We have been wanting to really implement and pilot a peer-to-peer evidence-based suicide prevention framework. We've talked about it previously in terms of sources of strength. But we are, this year, this fall, 3 of our schools, 1 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school, are going to be piloting Hope Squad, which is that peer-to-peer suicide prevention programming that really was made available to us through a grant with AASA. And then I have just steady persistence, right? Because I think that is just such a testament to everything we do in a public education system, because it is such a big system and requires time, right? Like to gather an understanding and to make change. And I think we are starting to truly see and reap the benefits for our students of being persistent and steady in that quest over multiple years. And so I think our next step in that is really starting to also, and I'll touch on that here briefly, to talk through that lens of, now that we're providing these services, like what is the change in student outcome? Because ultimately that's why we're providing them. But it's been a quest and a great deal of energy to get them in place. And that's, you know, some of the work that we have been doing on the second bullet point in this last section has been that intentional work. So all of our community providers now, as part of their agreement with us, is to share with us very specific data that we ask of them, not just for them to give to us, but so it's within the same framework that we're able to collect. And so last year we had 230 students who participated in a clinical experience while they were in school, so whether that service provider came into the school building or if it was done via telehealth. And of those 230, 118 of them discharged at some point during the year. So close to half, not quite, but close to half that discharged. But of those that discharged, 64% of them, so over half of them, discharged because they met their treatment goals. And so ultimately, when we think through the lens of our students, when we are providing those services, we're trying to bring stability into their personal life so that they can be the best students that they can be, and their brains can be the most open for learning. So by reaching those treatment goals, we can assume that the next step is that we're going to see some of those improvements in their attendance or academic performance or behavioral concerns as well. So just wanted to share that piece with you. Also in the board report, it has been a quest and a journey over this past year as we have been working to expand and provide some of those therapeutic services at the Explorer Academy, and really working with a partnership. Nexus Path is who we're working with. And again, flexibility, we went into that partnership thinking one thing specifically about a non-public school, and that has had to continue to evolve as we've navigated that process together and hit some potholes that we've had to regroup on. And but very excited to have that partnership in place where we will have a full-time mental health therapist as well as a case manager who will be at Explorer Academy during all hours of their school day to be able to provide that very needed treatment, and so that we can also then monitor that progress for those students who are being serviced there, and then talk about, based off of those results, where do we go with that? So I think with that, just kind of some high-level overview of the work that has been done that we've pulled out of the report. Certainly you have much more that was presented to you in the report, but we are happy to answer any questions that may exist as it relates to Strategic Initiative 2.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Robin?
I would like to start the conversation to make a motion that we accept reasonable progress has been made on RSI 2 for the 2024-25 school year.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Robin and a second from Nikki. Yes, do we have any discussion or questions? Robin?
The reason I made the motion is, even if I love the progress that you're making, it's nice to see this in one report. And building baseline data is also progress towards results. So thank you for your work. Keep it up. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Nikki?
Ditto to what Robin said. Everything in this report is good. It's amazing, and it's progress, and I really appreciate that. A couple of things jumped out at me that I wanted to pull out. I'm sure people are aware, but in case they aren't, Tristan, when you started out, you started talking about belonging, and that's such a huge piece. It's so critical to the success of the work that you do. And I really appreciate your understanding of that. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Jen, you had talked about the collaboration with UND and NDSU, and I think that's absolutely fabulous because it's a win-win all the way around for everybody, for the college students and for our district. So thank you for that. The Hope Squad peer-to-peer. Kids can reach kids in a way that adults and kids can't connect. That is just so big. Thank you, thank you. And then 64 kids met their goals and they transferred out. How amazing is that? That's exactly what we want. So rah to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Jason?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions and a comment. Just looking at standard 2 as far as mandated reporting, it seems low to me. I think you really need to focus on getting that up. The sooner the better. We know that some families move from district to district or city to city, state to state to avoid detection of abuse and things like that at home. So it's also an infraction for teachers not to report it. So I'd really like to see a focus on that increasing, because I believe it was at around 60% or so. So, and then a couple things with Catalyst and how do you say it? Eucara? Or just curious. I mean, we're starting contract negotiations. It seems like these are programs that are key to success for our students and teachers. I've heard a lot of positive things from different schools within the district. Curious if there's a way that, challenge our negotiation committee and FEA to find ways to reward teachers for that are hitting those marks year after year. So just a couple comments, and then a question about behaviors. That's been a hot topic over the last couple of years. Some schools have a reputation for dealing with them very well and holding students accountable, bringing the parents in so they're all on the same page and see results that way. Some schools do not have that reputation. There's also fears out there for having a school that has too many behavior problems or suspensions and things like that. How do you ensure teachers and principals that doing the right thing based on the actions of whether it's students, teachers, or principals is the right thing to do and not really juke the numbers or try to hide what's going on?
That's a great question. I think, as Dr. Gundy mentioned, that's why we start talking about recidivism. So when you only track behavior incident, then that's where we see systems try to juke and jab the numbers to say, well, if I'm held accountable to, or compared against other schools based on discipline infractions, then maybe I won't report everything because I don't want to seem too off target than another school. But what we understand in child development is students are coming to school to learn, and that's academically, but that's also behaviorally. And we can't predict we can't predict the mistakes or infractions students will have at our campus. What we do have a responsibility to do is to teach and to nurture and to support students in their journey through development. And so that's why recidivism is so important, because if I do a level 3 behavior infraction as a student, I made a mistake. And now with recidivism, what the school is then tasked to do is to wrap around some restorative interventions, some wraparound supports, and possibly an accountable consequence for that particular infraction. But what we're measuring is, does the student do it again? And if the student does it again, then that's not saying, oh, the student, something is wrong with the student. That's for us to look inward and say, maybe we didn't get the mixture of interventions right for this particular student to teach the behavior. So the appropriate behavior we would want to see. So I think the paradigm is shifting on, yes, we have measures that are looking at the number of infractions that are STARS reportable, but like one of the key measures there is recidivism. Like if we're doing a good job in restorative practices and trauma-informed practices and teaching appropriate behavior, what the research says is we lessen the likelihood that the student will do that particular behavior again. And so I think that's where our jobs as teachers, as supporters, as nurturers, when students have those behavior infractions come in, and that's what we hope with the Code of Character, Conduct, and Support, that we can also more clearly define some of the behaviors that we say are behaviors. Like before this year, we have certain behaviors, but we didn't explicitly define them. The state did. especially for the ones that are used to identify our schools as persistently dangerous. But we didn't like just holistically define all of those things, and that really helps us because it's not a one-way street, right? We want to empower parents to be able to have conversations with their students about these behaviors and what the behavior infraction was and what the definition of that was, and be able to debrief with them. And so by being able to come out with something that makes our discipline practices that were probably explicit, that also empowers our parents to start working with their child and working with us, and we get to work together as a school community to support the student versus like the school is the sole responsible party of handling a discipline infraction for our students. So it's really opening up the doors to invite our parents and our stakeholders in to be like, troubleshoot, problem solving partners with us to be able to like make sure we're teaching appropriate behavior to students.
Jason, can I respond to
Sure,
Jason?
go ahead.
Back to your mandated reporter question, and I'm a mandated reporter, as are all educators, and I'm sure Kristen is as well. Just this last year, the state of North Dakota is requiring everybody to sit through an hour-long training for mandated reporter. It was pretty pitiful before, and people were afraid to report. I would expect, due to that training, some of those numbers will tick up as far as the reporting goes. The results might not be any different, but that's up to Cass County Social Services to figure that out. So we'll see if we see some movement. It's a pretty painful training, even though it's only an hour long, and it's pretty dry, but something new from the state.
Just one piece that I would add on to that as well, because the state requires all of our teachers, counselors, and administrators. That's the required component of the state. Fargo Public Schools has said because we want to elevate those relationships that all of our adults might have with the students, that all of our staff are taking the training. So just a caveat there, when we talk about all staff, we don't mean just who's required by the state, but we really do mean all of our staff to be trained in the mandated reporter training.
Okay. Namal?
Well, Dr. Soar and Mr. Love, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I remember last time when you guys came and I kind of picked, I asked a ton of questions. Why are these data low? How are you doing it? And so forth. But it's still, it's still low, but this is a progress that I've been wanting to see. And I want you guys to continue it. My question is for you is how do you send out the survey to the parent or to the students or to the staff just to make sure that, they get all the information that they need so that way you guys can have more data? I'm not trying to say call them out and say send them more data.
That's a great question. I think what we saw from our parent, I'll start there, is we saw pretty good numbers. I would say over 1,000 parents answered the Parent Climate and Culture Survey. And remember, we gave it twice. And so both times, over 1,000 parents. And so, and we were given our Climate and Culture Survey every other year. And so this is have significantly increased the frequency in which we're asking our parents for feedback. So we partner with the communications department. We get it sent out on Twitter, on our socials, on our website. We have links. The parent survey is in multiple languages, I think like 8 different languages. So that's the initial way. This way, what you'll see in our reflections, we plan on visiting parent-teacher association meetings, being out on campuses. Like, we're really trying to do the push. We want to get even more parent voice because we feel that there's parents out there that are not, taking the time because maybe they don't think we're going to do anything with the results. And so we want as much voice as possible to make sure, we want to know what we're doing good, but we also want to know what we can improve on. For students and staff, it's going through the schools. So our principals and our administrators in our schools are really spearheading, getting it out to the campuses, getting it out to the students, carving out time in the school day for the students to be able to take the survey, and also for their staff, getting it out to their staff. And as of this year, they'll be tracking that towards that 90% completion rate. And so last year, you'll see with our staff data, our staff survey was more geared towards teachers than the holistic staff. And so we partner with human capital and the vital survey to make the survey more broad, to make sure, number one, we're not sending out multiple surveys. Staff are not getting the climate and culture survey from the Ed Justice Department and a vital survey from human capital. They're just getting one survey this year. And that will also increase the number of staff that we have to be able to give some feedback, give voice, and let us know how we're doing as a system. And the same for students, like just making sure they have that carved out time during the day, providing principals updates, weekly updates on what their numbers are, and then being able to really just push them towards that 90% of students being able to take the survey, which is our benchmark.
Thank you so much. I really
problem. Thank you,
appreciate
Nicole.
that. And then also too, I'm just wondering, like, how did you pull it off? I mean, the fact that, I know it's almost sort of strengths, because that's peer to peer. And the fact that, it's actually coming in and into progress and being put in place for the student to interact with each others, about mental health, that's really so incredible, because I talked about it before, and I really want the sort of strengths to be put into our Fargo Public School. And I know that it's not sort of a strength. I know that is it Alice? Is that what you said?
Hope Squad.
Hope Squad. I have not heard of them yet, but I did heard of sort of strengths because they doing it at Moorhead Public Schools, and they're doing an amazing job out there. But if this is part of it, kiddo to you guys, and because mental health it's so huge. And it's one of the issues that are really making our student not to succeed, because they just so many things that are going on into the world, and the more the student talk about mental health, the better it is. I just want to say thank you for that, for bringing it into our Fargo Public School, and I really appreciate the presentation. So.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Greg?
So for standard 7 measure 4, which I think has to do with expulsions. Yes, by the end of the school year, number of FPS student expulsions will decrease compared to previous school year as measured by STARS reporting. The report that we were given mentions pretty clearly that the STARS reporting, which I'm not 100% familiar with, basically is extremely wrong. I guess maybe first question about that would be, is this STARS reporting? I think that has to do with the state of North Dakota, but is that new? Like a new process, or like have we?
No, it's not a new. Yearly, we submit expulsion STARS reportable. That's the clause, I guess. STARS reportable disciplinary outcomes on suspension and expulsion to the state of North Dakota.
So, have we figured out yet whether the issue is with us or with them as far as why the data doesn't align to what we, because in the report it says it was actually 8, but STAR shows 2.
Yeah, it was an anomaly, and it was us. We have a data system that has a large margin for human error, meaning that if we have schools that have to manually input their STARS data to the state, and not every infraction, not every suspension, not every expulsion is a state reportable suspension or expulsion. And so what some schools had to do is go through all of their suspensions and all of any of the expulsions that they had, and they had to determine whether those things qualify. And if so, they had to then go back into a report and change something in the report to notate that it was an expulsion. And so that's why the expulsions were not accurate from our stars. But one of the things we noted in our aligned actions next year, well, this year, starting tomorrow, every single school in our district, K through 12, will be on the same behavior reporting form. And that behavior reporting form automatically tracks, or, the administrator would have to input that, but it would ask them about STARS reportable. And the cool thing about the Code of Character, Conduct, and Support, every discipline reflection that is STARS reported or state reported is notated. And so it's the same on the behavior report. So there's no guesswork whether infraction should or a suspension should be state reported or an expulsion should be state reported. And then the back end is just being able to report those reports directly or query those reports directly from the behavior report and being able to send those to the state. I predict that this year will be the last year that we will see inaccuracies in what we report to the state and what we have, because we've automated those behavior reporting forms and how we pull data, and there will no longer be a need for principals in school to double enter their behavior reporting data into STARS for those infractions that meet the criteria.
You love to hear it. Standardization causing efficiency and accuracy. Is there a was that issue the cause of why the measure is supposed to compare year over year differences? Is that the reason why we didn't have data from the previous year as well?
Yes. And that's just to be clear that we presented that in the evaluation of the data, that it was an anomaly. Like it wasn't, we didn't want to even go back, and we know the potential for, we actually saw that the previous year's STARS report potentially were not 100% accurate. And so because of the manual entry.
Dr. Gandhi, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, no, I mean, I could just provide some additional context on that too. When I started in my role in 2018, one of the first collaborative meetings I went to with other school districts was the North Dakota School Study Council. It's the group of the 10 largest school districts in the state, and we get together in September. At that meeting of September of 2018, I remember there was a discussion within the superintendent group about were the other Class A schools in the state reporting all of their suspension and expulsion data to the STARS reporting, or just the reportable data. That time, Fargo and West Fargo were the only two districts that were reporting all of it. And therefore, that is why during that time, we were perennially seen as what the state deems more dangerous campuses, because they do it out of a comparative standard with your Jamestown, Mandan, and Minot. So we scaled back and said we will only report scalable. And again, so when you don't have the right measure, you're motivated by the wrong things. That is why with this strategic alignment work that we're doing, so much of it is going to be the local data that we're looking at. So what the board has always received in terms of notifications for expulsions per our EL policy, those have been holistic, everything that's happened in the district. But STARS is the same system as, or it's parallel system to SLDS, the Student Longitudinal Data System, which we've shared about with the Native American discrepancy rates as well, that feeds insights. So most of our work and these measures are going to be based off of our local data because of some of those discrepancies, and that is why we're trying to focus on that right motivation. But I also want to own that I was part of that decision in 2018 when we decided with West Fargo that we were only going to report to the reportable suspensions and expulsions, because we didn't want our campuses, through comparison, because that's how the state accountability works, be perennially deemed highly dangerous campuses. That's the title that they use at the state level.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Do we have other questions about this, Greg?
Yeah, sticking with the STARS data, the very next measure is about out of school suspensions. I didn't see or read anything that we thought that data was problematic in any way. I guess, am I correct in understanding that?
Yes,
We think
and
that's
so
pretty good.
just to paint a picture, so a student, a STARS reportable data point may be mutual combat, had a fight. In the log entry or behavior reporting form, there could be a consequence for that student doing that, could be suspension. That's automatically put on that behavior reported form, and through policy, it's actually required before we suspend that kid. And so suspensions are not really the concern, it's really expulsion. So say for instance, this was the kid 15th fight. And the school was like, well, we did everything we can. We put all the supports in place. And they, I heard the case as an expulsion hearing officer. What we found is basically after the decision was rendered to expel the student, what the school or somebody on the back end would have to do is go back into that behavior reporting form and also add that student was expelled. And so I think that was where the discrepancy is, and we'll see that more on the expulsion side, but not the suspension side, because those suspensions are typically attached to the consequence that happens immediately once the behavior infraction occurred.
Then I kind of have to ask why we don't have in the report the previous year data for comparison when the measure asked to compare and see a decrease in the suspension data. If we're confident in the suspension data, then we should have year over year change data that is specified in the measure. It's just not here.
Yeah, and that was an oversight, and we can provide it on our monthly reflection.
That'd be awesome. Monthly reflection is probably the perfect place to do that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor to accept that reasonable progress has been made. And before we move into voting, I just want to see is there any other new comments or questions that people want to bring to the floor? Greg.
I have. I think this should be much shorter than it could be, but we'll see. This is obviously our first time monitoring results strategic initiative in this fashion with our new strategic plan. I learned a lot by spending 20 hours reading this. I have thoughts on the process, and I think, and I'll let everybody else maybe weigh in, but I think process questions I should just bring to governance.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Because Rupak referred to it earlier, but there was a change in the measures, and I didn't like that. And I have a question of who owns what. But yeah, I'll bring it to governance.
Okay, thank you. Any other new conversations, questions? Allie?
Okay, so a couple questions, and I'll start with feedback. So the first one, I guess, just is in terms of graphical representation. The target is for 90% achievement, and then what that goal looks like. It was in the narrative, and so I was able to read it in the report. But maybe just for future reference, just maybe put that as like a note on the side of if we've got 2 data points that we're looking to track, right, which is not only the number of people that took the survey, but the actual survey outcome is to include both the data points and the representation, just for future. And just a summarization from my understanding based upon your further questions was the survey that is going to go through the communications department, so that does the board have pre-approval on those questions, or do we get to look at that before it goes out? Does that go through the communications committee?
No, ma'am.
No, okay. Suggestion that maybe it should, if that's. And onto the mental health piece, number one, I think that's really important that we are bringing all of these different partnerships into our schools. I know that there's been a lot of conversations around mental health, and it's a huge topic and talking point. So I just wanted to congratulate the great work specifically there, but then also lead up to a question, which is around the partnerships that we have in our schools. How are those vetted, and how do we determine which partnerships we go with?
So largely, as it speaking for mental health, they're unduplicated services, and so that's one of the first pieces that we take a look at. And then, of course, depending on the size of the contract, sometimes we follow the bidding process in order to award the contract. For other organizations, so we always have an annual meeting. That's part of our agreement for anybody. So there's like a little training and onboarding, if you will, for them. And then there's the community use of schools application that they have to complete, as well as the insurance portion that they have to verify. And then from there, what our annual meeting is really to review our agreement. And so that's really how those organizations are vetted. And then they become what we call a pre-approved provider. So then from that point, all of those services are always initiated from the school level. And so what we don't want to happen is, we're not providing mental health services as a convenience to the family, but really with the intention of we're providing those services in the school setting when the student has barriers that prevent them from being able to access the services outside of the school day. So we have a variety of rubrics that we also use at the school level to identify who might be a good candidate for those services. And then once that happens, if it's needed, approval, of course, with the principal, ensuring that any IEPs that need to be considered are also considered. Then that moves forward to approval from teaching and learning before those services happen. So that's kind of a snapshot of how the folks are identified to be a pre-approved provider. All of those pieces have to be in place, and those meetings have to have occurred. And then that referral happens from within the school setting, not a parent or another provider who thinks it would just be more convenient for it to happen during school time.
Makes sense. Okay. And then on to the 3 schools you said that are piloting the Hope Squad program this year. Are you able to share what 3 schools those are?
For sure. We're doing a feeder pattern. So we have an elementary, middle, and high school. So Lewis and Clark, Carl Nielsen, Fargo South.
Perfect. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then some other further questions around the STARS program. Now, my understanding is this is mandated reporting in terms of behaviors. And I know Jason kind of touched on this question as well as Greg, where we're just having a lot of discrepancies within the overall reporting on it. And it sounds like we've updated the forms, and so we'll have some consistency around that. Do we have somebody at the district office level that oversees that program, or is that you, Tristan?
Yes, we have IT members, members in the technology department that oversees the behavior report in Power School. We have Stephen that's going to help us make sure we pull in those reports, and hopefully we don't have any behavior infractions, STARS reportable behavior infractions in the first 2 days of school. If so, then you will see those on your August reflection as well.
Okay. So I guess not necessarily from a technology perspective, but is there a behavioral person that's like a STARS program? And maybe I'm misinterpreting the program itself. Is there a specific program around STARS, or is that just the reporting mechanism?
Yeah, that's just the reporting mechanism. And basically what the state does is these are the behavior infractions we want to know about. Mm-hmm. We want to know if you have suspended for these, and we want to know if you have expelled for these. And if it's not here, then it's considered optional reporting. And so basically we need to report to the state those infractions we've suspended for and expelled for that's in that category. And the state basically use that to identify persistently dangerous schools. And so that's why we want to also track that, because we want to make sure that our schools are not considered persistently dangerous.
Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah. Thank you for the questions today on discipline. And I just want to kind of go back once again, just emphasize the importance of having that right measure and how much recidivism is going to be more impactful. I think all of us have been subject to some of those narratives as well about like one campus addresses discipline better than another one. And those are anecdotal pieces of information that we've historically responded to based off like, oftentimes it's based off when a teacher keeps seeing a kid come back to their classroom, they're going to feel like what's happened or nothing's changed, right? And we look at personalities of principals, whether they're strict or not, and what's working or what's not. But those conversations have never been determined based off effectiveness in terms of what is the actual outcome that we want to get to. And what we've uncovered over the past couple of years is several different things. Some of it is that we had to close the loop. So we are working with our administration to make sure that if they're taking a disciplinary action or whatever with the student, we're working harder to close that loop with that staff member that referred that student so they know what the piece is. But the recidivism data is going to be extremely helpful. Like Tristan mentioned earlier, parents and community members have asked for consistency in response to behavioral infractions. That's what the code of conduct will do. But I can't tell you today, a year from now, if the code of conduct is going to be effective or not. But I will when I pair that with the recidivism data, because I will be able to then say, when I look at the repeat behaviors per infraction, and then compare that to our code of conduct matrix and say, well, this has a really high repeat infraction piece, so this code of conduct discipline piece is probably working or not working. Now we have a built-in mechanism based off data on the outcome that we want to be able to build that piece. So then we won't, it may be, we may continue to get some of those anecdotal pieces of information because 99.9% of our job is based on relationships and dynamics. And I know from my own kids that disciplining the two of them are very different and what works or what doesn't work. So sometimes the anecdotes shine a light on the problem, but then we overreact to the solution. And we need the right data and the right strategy and the right measurement to be able to find that solution. The other way where I think this recidivism data is going to be really helpful down the road, sorry to Tristan and Jen because they tell me to slow my roll, but I think part of what we'll be able to recognize is when we talk about mental health, we don't know the difference between a behavior that can be taught to be better or a behavior that is a symptom that needs to be treated. Even in our adult society, when you take a look at what the psychology research shows you around stealing versus another infraction, one is more rooted in a psychological piece that needs treatment versus another one that can potentially be taught. So if we want to go down that future piece of behavior can be taught through social emotional, the right consequences, or that right restorative practices, then it'll provide us more of that clarity and also help us hopefully shine light on some of the pieces that we may be trying to address through behavioral interventions at the school discipline level, but they're unsuccessful because the students, that's not a behavior, it's really a symptom that needs a treatment from a service provider. And we don't have that clarity right now. That's one of the things that we're really trying to draw the line on, and like, what is an accommodation on the academic end and what is a treatment from a mental and behavioral health service provider that has that training and background. The data will be able to provide us that because we're now looking at the right data in terms of what actually impacts whether a student commits an infraction again or they repeat that behavior again or not.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other new comments or questions to bring to the floor? Nikki.
If I may, just a quick point of clarification. As far as, and I know you're new and I know we haven't met yet, the CEA committee is meant to be the voice of the board's work. So I just didn't want any confusion. Tristan will work with the internal communications department because we're not in the day-to-day like they are. So.
Yes, Namal?
So I've been having this question on my mind the whole entire time, and I'm not trying to take us back to the beginning. So I just have a question on the monitoring on number 3, strengths of catalyst approach certifications and so forth. And I know that every time that I step a foot into the school system, into one of those schools or whenever, there's always some staff that are really hesitating about catalyst approach. So my question for you is how do you go about that and handle that? Because for one, I saw, I'm not going to say who, there are some staff that wrote, something on the board of the staff room, and I didn't like that because that was not the way to move forwards. that was very disrespectful to the rest of the staffs, who are working really hard regarding Catalyst approach. And some of them are really dedicated, to make sure that, that they learn how to manage, or how to literally, like, how to control the behavior of their students, in the classroom. And I know that there's some teachers, have a different approach of things. And I just wanted to see it in here. I want to know, what are the actual numbers, of those teachers who are really, are Catalyst training? And is there any different behavior among them when the some of them that are Catalyst trained and some are not? Is there any different behavior have you seen around the students? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and I think that is one that we probably don't have specific numbers to, right? So it's a little bit more anecdotal. In our what we have said, because of what we are seeing in those observations and recognition, is that there are a lot of ways to manage a classroom, and for some of our teachers who are not Catalyst trained or Catalyst certified have great classroom management, and so it doesn't always have to be Catalyst. One of the pieces that we're finding, though, is that when there is when there might be some classroom management concerns or improvements to make, that's where we really then lean into Catalyst as well. So to specifically answer your question, Amal, we don't have that specific data, but more and more what we are talking about as classroom teachers are bringing forward students that they feel like they have exhausted all of their tools, and they're struggling on that social emotional learning perspective or continuum. We're currently working to help identify how can we pour back into that classroom teacher to ensure that those Catalyst strategies are in place, to see if or to tweak it if they already are Catalyst certified, in order to really think through that lens of best practice, trauma-informed practices in that classroom environment. So I don't think I've completely answered your question. I think it's one that we're grappling with too, right? Like how do we identify that, knowing that we do have many teachers who have great classroom management who have never been Catalyst trained or certified. And then just as an aside, that is where when you see in the report Catalyst certified, there is a yearly process to be Catalyst certified. So we have a lot of people, many of our staff members who have been Catalyst trained, so they've participated in a training, but that is different than being Catalyst certified. And to be Catalyst certified, you have to demonstrate the 12 principal foundations of Catalyst annually to really hold that certification.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I love the fact that I did follow one of the instructor who went to a teacher classroom, to show the difference between the Catalyst approach and there's the non ones, and you can see how the students are responding to that approach, before the non approach, and so forth. And I know that, sometimes, it's not easy to manage students, from a different background, from different parent teachings, and so forth. And it's difficult, but I just want to say thank you for answering this question, and I don't want to continue. I think for the sake of time, we'll stop.
Yes, any other further new questions or comments to bring to the floor? Okay, Anne Marie, let's do the roll call, please.
Jason Nelson,
Yes.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Olenberger,
Yes.
Berkland,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Christensen, Meinier.
Yes, motion passes 9-0. And this moves us on now to the award of proposal. You'll find this in memo number 24. And I'm assuming James is going to speak to us about that because your name is first on the list and you're walking to the podium.
Happy to do so. Is this on? Yep, looks like it. So yeah, we the memo before you gives you the highlights, but we have received proposals and are recommending the selection of Confluence for facilitation or professional facilitator for the community-driven redevelopment, which the term we'd used during long-range facility planning was the Define Your Neighborhood campaign. So this is a sort of the officially branded process that was discussed as part of the long-range facility planning process, specifically to work with those communities who are affected by the long-range plan, where we may not have a school at a site where we currently do once all the actions are complete. So we received 3 proposals on August 8th. We interviewed the highest scoring firm on August 16th, which included board members Nelson and Gullickson. And we had some good Q&A and really great discussion on the process. And, one of the interesting pieces of this is, a lot of things that we put RFP out or request for bids are pretty well-defined, process, deliverable, but this is not a widget that we're purchasing. It's very much a sort of broad scope with a unique deliverable. And so we left that interview feeling pretty confident in the recommendation for selection of Confluence. One of the rubric items was the additional value. And I wanted to maybe actually touch on that because I think there were a few things that stuck out with Confluence. And that one is that they were the only firm with a local presence, with a local office. And they actually have a partner in Folkways that's part of the team who has a solid reputation of bringing community together. And so we were intrigued by that. Another piece was that they had actually just been selected to work with Fargo Parks on their their master planning services. So Fargo Parks is working through sort of reviewing their sites, their amenities, all of that in a very comprehensive way. And there's certainly potential opportunities for alignment with these two processes in the timing and in the scope of work of the two. So that was certainly kind of an added benefit where there's some potential synergy there. The other thing I wanted to address briefly before taking any questions was the fee part of the work, or the fee part of the proposal. When you have this sort of a broad scope, you will see a range of fee proposals, and you'll see that they range from 50,000 to, I think, was it over 300 anyway? And this proposal was kind of right in the middle. Part of that fee proposal, it's obviously related to how many meetings you're having, what type of effort you're putting into getting the desired outcome. And when we looked at that and balanced it, really Confluence was what I would consider the best value of the 3 proposals. Another consideration there is reimbursables. So Confluence, being the local, did not have travel, food, hotel, like those types of reimbursables. And they actually included, and we confirmed in our interview, like translation and interpretation services, which were reimbursable for others. At the end of when we get into contract negotiation and kicking off the scope of work and working through the work plan, it's possible that there are components in there that would be actually taken out, and we may end up paying less than what the proposed fee is at the end of the day, as long as we are still getting the desired outcome from with the group that we're working with. So those are just some of the high level touch points I wanted to address. And but with that, certainly take any questions that anyone might have.
Okay, thank you. Robin?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proposal from Confluence for professional facilitator services, issue a contract accordingly, and then I have some comments.
Okay. So we have a second. Greg, was that you? Okay, thank you. Comments or questions?
Thank you. Thank you for letting us be part of this. It was very appropriate for Nikki to be there as part of CEA, and I think I was the only one that had questions. And so that's kind of why I was placed there. They assuaged my concerns about getting to those very hard to reach communities that we probably didn't reach the last time we did the surveys. And I know a lot of board members had those concerns, and that was probably their top priority. And that's what I appreciated about this firm.
I would agree.
Nikki?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about that too. They had a lot of innovative ideas, a lot of plans to reach to try to get as many people involved as possible. But another piece that I really liked, two pieces that I really liked, is because they are working with Fargo Parks as well. I think that's a good opportunity for both entities to collaborate through this process. Secondly, not only do they have a local presence, but a couple of real key members have grown up here and remained here. So they're aware of the neighborhoods and the homeowners and how those spaces are utilized, and for ideas that could come forth as to how to be utilized, receiving, of course, all that input. It meant a lot to me that somebody understood those communities that we're talking about and working with. So I'm full support. And there were a lot of other pieces that the other groups would have had to tack on pricing for, because they weren't a piece of the original proposal. So I think for the lower cost, you'd have seen that rising quickly. So thank you.
Okay. Then Allie, did you?
Yes, I guess in terms of the fact that both Fargo Public Schools and Fargo Parks is utilizing the same firm, and we'll be doing obviously some work together with them, is Fargo Parks paying something similar? I just think about taxpayers and things like that, and if they're helping the same entities, if there's a 2-for-1 deal, I guess, if you will. I don't know. Call it what it is.
I see Rupak looks like, did you want to, I can certainly comment on that as well. At first I thought I saw your hand go up like you had a. Go ahead and I'll go after you. Sure. So we, for this exercise, we are the primary sponsor of it, and we are bearing the cost of this. I will say that with the Fargo Parks master planning, for example, we actually are a part of that as well. And there's a scope of work defined specifically to look at some of our sites and some of the amenities and our agreements with parks. So we do collaborate with each other on these, and we're involved in their process. They're involved in ours. So at the end, it really is the community getting the best possible value out of both these initiatives.
So we're paying for it this time around, and next time they're paying for it?
Now Rupak definitively raised his hand, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, no, we had multiple discussions with city parks and schools regarding kind of how to go about this work. Like I described our process earlier into 3 phases, identifying our facility conditions, the solution, which is our long-term plan, and then once the plan is executed, what do you do with the redevelopment of certain sites that may be repurposed? We are in phase 3 of that plan, right? So that's what we are utilizing this service for. So when we were meeting as the 3 entities, the other 2 entities are in phase 1 or phase 2. And so we really tried to say, how do we all come together, pay, and try to utilize one company to not duplicate services? And we realized that the 3 different phases, those goals were not aligning in terms of how we would get these facilitated conversations, because the park district is building their long-range plan, and we are asking for community input on redevelopment if our plan is to be executed and repurpose some of our buildings. The park district will have that need eventually, potentially as well, if they bring any of their sites offline or repurpose them, as will the city. So where we landed on the best solution was each entity to go through their process of developing their long-range plan. And park district may also say, we're gonna bring X facility offline, or we're gonna have a repurpose here. Then they can go reach out and facilitate this conversation with their members as well. So the reason that we did this is because this is only a facilitated conversation for 3 communities that are impacted by if our long-range plan were to be executed as it's been approved by the Board of Education. The other reason why we weren't able to land on a joint agreement is because we recognize that although all 3 of our entities serve residents in the city of Fargo, we work off of a different geography. So we want these facility conversations to be for the 3 sites, meaning the individuals who are in the school boundaries for those 3 sites: Madison, Horace Mann, or Madison, Roosevelt, Hawthorne. That may not be the same as the Madison neighborhood, which is geographically defined by the city. So we didn't want that discrepancy where the people that we want showing up to provide input in these meetings are the ones that are zoned to the Madison school. Maybe not, they may or may not be the same individuals that the city deems to be in the Madison neighborhood based off of their geography and how they do that piece. So there were some of those challenges. The end recipient of this is the Board of Education in Fargo that will get a product that will say the individuals that live in this school district boundary, should these sites become repurposed, these are some potential ideas that they want for redevelopment. And because we're the only owners of that, we are the ones paying for this service because that's what we're asking for. Park District and City will be able to do the same once their plans are completed.
Any other further questions or comments? Yeah, oh yes.
Just one thing I wanted to share with board members that was new to me as a resident of Fargo, that was a little bit helpful as well. I had some questions myself going into the final interview about just folkways. I've seen them as an event planner. I didn't know, and they shared this during this process as well. They have a folkways studio. It's not the one that you'll see at all the events. They actually work on civic engagement, and they've done projects with the city and other entities around more formalized getting input for projects such as these, and that would be Folkways Studio that you're using. So just when you see that name, it's not just we're going to do a night bazaar and get engagement through that way. It's actually a different scope of services that they have within the umbrella of their organization.
Okay, thank you for adding that clarity. I will say I'm also excited about this proposal once I learned a little bit more about Confluence and Folkways, and thank you to board members Robin and Nikki for being engaged in that discussion. And I think we are ready for a roll call vote.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Holenberger,
Yes.
Berglund,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Jason Nelson,
Yes.
Christensen Meinier.
Yes. Okay, and that motion passes 9-0. And that takes us now to our board reports. And I would like to share that GP 5 requires that the president run efficient, timely, orderly, and to-the-point meetings. So in the spirit of being to the point, we're going to move into our committee liaison and correspondence reports. If you did attend a committee meeting, your committee chair will report out on that committee meeting, so you do not need to share that. And we're also asking that you only share things that you have done, not things that are upcoming that are related to your role here. And I am going to start with Robin.
Thank you. And in an attempt to be brief, I actually wrote my report tonight. So, but just to give you a couple highlights, I visited Agassi. Jennifer Free oversees the adult. Could you take one down and pass it around? Thank you. Adult learning and even start. You will see there that primary focus areas are English learners, general GEDs, and adult basic ed and even start. 1,250 students last year. Want to bring your attention to this is funded through state and federal grants. These aren't school district dollars. You see the courses there. And then the last paragraph, I would say it's important to note how important the community partnerships are for the wraparounds here. An example, timing couldn't be better. When I was there, a pregnant student walked in to register for Dakota, and we talked about the registration, and then we walked her to the family classroom and showed her where her baby can be while she's learning. And in that room, there had diapers, formula, refrigeration, and for breast milk, and a private breastfeeding area. She came in with her father, and they were delightfully surprised. So timing could not have been better from Jennifer and President Franklin's aspect. If you turn the page over, Even Start, they had 80 students last year. They're primarily funded through Fargo Public Schools, United Way, and the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. I had a pleasant visit with the ECA teacher, Beth, and she's been there for 26 years, so ever since she graduated. And then in summation, I will say Jennifer Free has built a community of wraparound services to help adult learners, seniors, and their pre-K that learn. And when I asked her what is the one thing that she wants the board to know, I said she said the importance and impact of their programming that their programming has for families, and that we are a true community. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that. We're going to move to Greg now.
Planning committee met. We didn't make decisions on anything. I'm not sure how to summarize it better than what is in our meeting minutes, but you can take a look at the ongoing conversations that we have for planning. I think the biggest thing that's on our horizon is going to be the community survey process as far as how the long-range facilities plan is going to be implemented. And just budget stuff all the time, probably.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Melissa?
Yeah, so negotiations committee met last Friday, and we got homework assignments to prepare us for our next meeting. And we also didn't really make any decisions, so it was a pretty short meeting. My liaison schools are Ben Franklin, Virtual Academy, and Washington. Last week I attended Ben Franklin's back to school night. Their air conditioning is not working, or it wasn't, but the spirits were high. So that was, oh, now it is. It is. I was, okay, there you go. Okay, so then on Monday, I spent the morning from 8 to noon with Ben Franklin doing their professional development, and they focused on their learning initiatives and how they're going to pair them with a strategic plan, and it was really great. And we did an icebreaker where Kristen Hansen and I were the only ones who believed that the air conditioning would be working, so I don't want to pin myself into a hole. I was very positive about that. Then I attended back to school night. Well, it was more of an open house for the virtual academy on Monday, and it was really neat. They set up a scavenger hunt for all of the students. They came downstairs here and they got to meet their teachers. They got their devices. They met their counselors. We had a presentation on the expectations of the year, and it was really neat. I'm fairly unfamiliar with Virtual Academy, but the principal's wonderful, and the students were really excited. And I didn't know, but we have about 200 students that are in our Virtual Academy, K through 12. So yeah, it was great. And then from there I headed to Washington Elementary. They also had an excellent back to school night. There were so many families and students there, and I got to meet the principal and assistant principal and then several staff members. I was trying to wander in, but also not be a bother. But it was a great night, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Kristen?
I was able to attend Fargo South's teacher in service opening, and I was able to listen in on what the brand new principal, Christy Brandt, was able to kind of give out to her staff as a year beginning of the year kickoff, and it was really inspiring, and I think she's going to be a wonderful addition to that building. Every teacher and staff person I talked to talked about how much they love working at Fargo South, and it was just kind of a really lovely place to be at that time. I was able to make some comments, so I talked from my perspective of somebody who's in leadership, and we discussed servant leadership and what that means going forward. How do we welcome our kids into the building, how we are going to receive them, how we interact with them, and try to set them up, getting them ready to think about the school year ahead. So.
Nice. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm going to go to Allie now.
All right. So I had the opportunity to sit down with James, and we talked all things facilities and long range plan for, I think it was a good 2.5 hours that we spent together last Friday. So all things were wonderful. We talked about a lot of different opportunities there, and just really excited about the long range plan that we have put forth for our school district. I think it's just really phenomenal, and I really appreciate the process that we utilized to put that together. So I also had the opportunity to visit with one of my liaison schools. I met with the principal and the assistant principal over at Eagles, learned a lot of great things about the programs that they have piloted and spearheaded within that school. Their principal, Jen, is new this last year, and she just I came in and I just learned all the things, and it was really great, and just really felt the positive school culture that she's been able to create there. And if you've never had the opportunity to hear Troy Cody speak from Davies, I think the man could literally be a motivational speaker. His entire staff sat towards the back of the auditorium because they were Troy's going to be on fire today. And I was I wasn't quite prepared for the level of on fire that he was going to be. But let me tell you, just the passion in that building. And he obviously had me speak, but I enjoyed much more hearing from him, as well as their student body president, and just the different things that they brought on back to school for all of the educators in the building. It was just really, really great to be able to be a part of that. So that's all I have for report outs.
Great. Let's go to Jason.
Well, you said be concise. So I attended my committee meetings and then also met with my principals and assistant principals of my 3 liaison schools. Also met with James Hand for not as long as Hallie, but we talked, or Allie, we talked lawnmowers and a few other facility things. I'm going to follow that up with a meeting late this week or next week on the long range facility plan.
Okay. Good to know we're keeping James busy. All right, Namal.
Well, thank you. I can compete with them, but we'll just say I did attend my planning committee, and Greg was awesome. And then I attended the August brunch and learns, which was fun. It seemed like new things are coming to NSBA. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. I did the brunch and learn too, but when I made my list, I left it off. But yes, there are a bunch of great things coming. And we all forgot August 14th, we had that fabulous school board training. So we were all there. One of my schools is Discovery, and I attended their Discovery Eagle Camp, which was awesome. Ran around, got to look in the classroom, see the kids, talk to some of the staff. Just a fabulous crew over at Discovery. And then I also went to their back to school night, August 22nd. August 16th, attended the Confluence meeting. I'm not sure who brings up, do you bring up governance? Maybe I don't need to bring that up. Okay. And August 22nd, the all-staff opener. Yesterday, I attended a listening session at United Way, which was very interesting. I learned a lot. It was on childhood poverty and student success. And I was pleased to walk in and see Robin. And then I sat down and looked across, and there was Denise Jonas. So we had a good showing at that one. Today I had my one-to-one with Dr. Gandhi. And I'm in touch with my other 2 schools, which is the Self-Directed Academy and Kennedy. We're trying to set up a time to get together. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, Nikki. So for my president's report, I will share that we did have our first governance committee as a full committee with our new chairs. And I was also able to take my first liaison visit to Clara Barton Hawthorne, which I had never been in those buildings before. It was a really lovely visit, and it definitely, I think I learned more about the challenges of having 2 different buildings and kind of managing just the staff and meeting times and floating back and forth between those 2 buildings. So that was really insightful for me. I'm excited to get back there. I also want to just send out an extra big thanks to Dr. Sarah, Tristan, and James for hanging with us for these 2 hours and for all of the work that you put in and answering all of our questions and our emails for everything you've done for us. And then also just a friendly reminder to please reply to Anne Marie with your conference RSVP information. So both the North Dakota School Board Association Conference that's in October, and then there's the National School Board Association Conference that is in the spring. So please reach out to her if you haven't given her your information yet. And then our next meeting will take place on September 10th. It is 7:42 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.